Hey, good afternoon. My name is Pablo. Today we are here in the political department with Helen Delfeld. She is professor for the international relations. And today we are going to talk about the human rights. And thank you very much for being our guest today.
My pleasure.
Why the human rights become so important after the Second World War, especially in Europe?
We can really see why human rights became central to the European imaginary when we look at the first two world wars. When we look at the two world wars of the 20th century, the massive deaths that happened in Europe. After the first war, there was a real realist sense going into the war. Everybody's happy to go to war in the First World War. The interwar period, people realized that wasn't such a good idea. They thought they could create an eternal peace after the war. The Second World War disabused them of this notion, especially the atrocities against minorities. Made people really sit up and pay attention to the fact that we needed some sense of universal norms for how it's okay for a state to behave toward its people. So, starting right after World War II, we actively started an agenda of discovering what we thought those norms should be. So we started out with a set, and it's been a continuing evolving process of figuring out what we want to say about what we think people deserve.
Why the United States have got a lot of troubles in order to sign the human rights?
To figure out why the U.S. is so reluctant to sign on the human rights treaties, I think theoretically we need to take another look back at the Lockean oppositional stance to the state. Human rights still has evolved in a complex relationship with the state. The state presumes control over a given territory. And in the U.S., this sense of we must make a social contract within these territorial boundaries has been pushed to the limits. We really believe in this deeply. We believe that our social contract dictates that we have control over our territory. That's the good part, that we really do believe here in the States that we should have control of our territory. The bad part is that we're not really willing to engage with other people as equals in this process. We have a problem with reciprocity with other states. That applies to everything, not just human rights, but especially to human rights, where American exceptionalism, this belief that America is special, leads people to falsely believe that the United States is actually the human rights leader in the world, when in fact we've got a lot of examples of polities that are doing a much more interesting job in moving human rights forward. South Africa, for example, is doing brilliant things legally, but that's hard to persuade the American populace that.
Are the human rights utopian?
Then this does raise the question, especially coming from the position of an American, where I've already talked about the American exceptionalism that we believe in very thoroughly, that is any approach to human rights just dreaming? Well, I think we do not discuss politics in the same way that we did 60 years ago. Politics itself has changed in response to human rights. So is it utopian? Yes, absolutely, in one sense, that we will never get to the point where everybody has their rights fulfilled. This is not a project that will see completion. However, we think about the world differently. So in a way, we are thinking our way through our own utopian process. So yes, it's utopian, but we can see real-world effects already. And this is in the beginning of the process.
Okay, so Helen Delfeld, thank you very, very much for your time. It was very interesting.
It was a pleasure.
For Cougar Television, I'm Pablo Lopez. See you next time.